Right, the next thing here we have is what are the barriers to effective communication? I always just circle back to, the drink lilt, okay? That's, if they ask me about the barriers to communication, I just think of that drink lilt. First barrier to communication is language. Again, if you use overly complicated language, that's going to be a problem there. So the word to note there is jargon, right? And how do you prevent this? Short, clear sentences, use language that's appropriate to your audience's educational levels. Next barrier to effective communication is if there's an information overload. It can be very, it can overwhelm the receiver. So imagine again, if I just give you tons and tons of notes without anything highlighted, that can be very overwhelming. So how do you get around that? See that there, guys? They can ask there, like, how do you overcome this, or what's the remedy? Well, at least highlight the important things. If you are going to throw loads and loads of information at someone, at least highlight what's important so they know what they have to focus on. Next thing then is lack of feedback. Right, so questions, if people don't get a chance to ask any questions, that's going to be a barrier there, okay? So you want to build in a mechanism where students can ask feedback, people can ask questions, again, that's going to improve the communication. So again, even like we see it even with these classes here, we know that, the classes are pre-recorded, but again, our plan long-term is to start building in questions and, live courses where people can ask questions, and that way then they can overcome any thing they're not too sure about, okay, or any questions they may have. Timing as well can be a barrier. If you send the message too late, the other person receiving the message might not get it on time or might not respond on time. And the last thing then they want you to highlight there is trust. If there's a lack of trust in the sender, so even if you believe that the sender is not telling the truth, or they're not capable, or they're not competent enough, you're less likely to listen to them, okay? So that's the other barrier there. So you need to encourage communications training. That's going to improve, that's going to eliminate those barriers. So that's it there. If they ask you guys about the barriers to effective communication, just circle back there to the drink lilt, okay? Circle back to the drink lilt, all right? And that you have there. Language, information overload, lack of feedback, trust, and timing. That's us there for those points, all right? Next one then, guys, they can ask us is, what's the importance of communication in business? And I always just go back to, I just think of the name Dimitri, okay? So if you've got good communication in the business, again, the reason I want to mark this in, guys, is students tend to wing this. They say stuff like, oh, communication is brilliant because company was better and it raised their profits. Anything vague like that will get you no marks at all, okay? So when you're going down through it, the first thing there is the benefits of communication for a business. Well, the first thing is going to be the business will make better decisions because they're more informed. The manager is more informed, they consult the staff, and they get all the information that they need. Also then, motivation is going to increase because the manager is clearly communicating the targets to the staff and what they need to get done each week. Brilliant. The next one, so Dimitri, DMI. I is industrial relations. Okay, so you're going to have better industrial relations. Remember, guys, industrial relations is basically just the relationship between the manager and the employer. So again, that's going to improve because with clear communication, there's no confusion, no ambiguity, there's no uncertainty. People know exactly what they need to do. The workers perform better, then the manager is happier with the workers. So that's the next one. So DMI. So you've got decision-making, motivation, improved industrial relations, and the T is teamwork. There's going to be better teamwork. And again, when people work in teams, they perform better at their job. Again, matrix structure is key there. You're going to have a rise in productivity because that's important there. Deadlines are very clearly communicated. So again, if you've got your workers and managers saying, look, we have to have everything done by Friday the 14th, and then the workers know they're working towards that date. And the last one then is when you've got good communication, Dimitri, D-M-I-T or I, the last point there is the I is entrepreneurship. Okay, there's easy flow of ideas between the managers and the employees can, if they think of a good idea, they say it to the manager straight away, and then the manager can take action on that. Okay, that's you there on that. They're the benefits of communication there. Another one then they can ask you is like, right, they can say like, right, what are the elements of effective communication? So if you want to communicate effectively with your staff or if you're doing a presentation, what you need to do. First thing is you need to be prepared. So you need to factor in the education level of your target audience and make sure the message matches them. So don't use language that's too simplistic or too complicated. Next thing then, guys, is the safety. So again, if you're, let's say, communicating something that's very sensitive, a face-to-face meeting is a lot better, obviously, than putting it in writing, because if you put it in writing, the message can be passed on. The next one then is number 3. These are the elements. Again, make sure we're following me in this question, right? But this here is like, what are the elements of effective communication? So use appropriate language, okay? So make sure you avoid any jargon. Jargon's a great word to use. Like, jargon is when somebody is like really knowledgeable about a topic and they talk to everybody else as if they have the same knowledge. So it'd be like, you know, a mechanic talking about the brake horsepower in a car and stuff like that, or the size of the engine or anything like that. If that's fine if you're into cars, but if you're not, you're going to be fairly lost. Next one then is visuals. Use visuals. I know that quote sounds a little bit waffly, but we see it in the marketing scheme a lot. A picture paints 1,000 words, especially if you're giving financial information about like house price or graphs. Visuals like bar charts can be very, very effective there. Also, with effective communication, there might be legal requirements. So some communication needs to be in writing, like an employment contract, legality of form. Do you remember we did it there in chapter 1, legality of form? That's what you're factoring in there as well. That's another thing you need to consider. Feedback, you need to give people a chance to ask questions and allow for immediate feedback. And what we need to be doing there is like, let's say if you're giving a talk and you know you've got an hour, well, make sure you put aside, don't be talking straight for the hour. Put aside 15 minutes at the end to let people ask questions, or put a break in the middle to allow for that, okay? So, but build that in to your presentation. And last and then is accuracy. If you're giving information about statistics, it has to be very accurate. So you notice down there, it's written notes, all factual information must be correct. All right, that's really, really important there. That must be accurate, and that's what they want you to use there. So make sure, again, they're the elements of effective communication. Another question there is, this is incredibly similar, right? But they can also ask you, what are the factors you need to consider when choosing a method of communication? And I just have like cause, solve, so cost, safety, appropriate language, urgency, and legal requirements. Okay, so there is a lot of them do overlap with what we saw earlier, but this is if you're choosing method of communication. So what they want to say there is like, if you're choosing like email or meetings or face-to-face conversation or video conferencing or sending out letters, what are the factors that you need to consider? So the first one there is the cost. Okay, so an email is a lot cheaper than holding meetings. So that's one benefit. The next one then is the safety. So again, if a message is highly confidential, you're better off having a face-to-face meeting. The A there is appropriate language. Again, it's circling back to this point here, which is crucial, but you need to look at your target audience's education level. So again, like see the simple example there. If a business is providing instructions for kids' toys, it must be in clear, simple language so that the kids can understand it. Dead simple, but just make sure you've got that marked in. The urgency, if it's like, so let's say somebody's, there's an accident or something, a phone call is obviously going to be the best method to approach there. And then last and then, certain forms of communication must be in writing, like employment contracts or insurance documents. So that's what you want to factor in. If they ask you what factors should you consider when choosing method of communication, that's what you want to look out for. Now, this is a bit of a weird question, but there's an overlap here in these pages, right? So if we look out for like the elements of effective communication and the factors you need to consider when choosing a method of communication, there's a blatant overlap there. So if you see it there, like points number 2, safety overlaps, language overlaps, and legal requirements overlap. So if you want to mark them in there yourselves, guys, they're the 3 that I'd be starting off, that I'd be making sure that I focused on. They are the ones that I'd be stressing are the most important. Highlight that, make sure you mark them in, go back over in your own time. But again, they've asked that question, I think 4 times in Leaving Cert, and they've asked that twice, okay? So if you're going over them, there is that overlap there. Just be very, very ruthless on it. I think it was 2014, there was one year when they asked that, and the answers were 2015, and the answers were shockingly poor on it. Students were just kind of trying to wing it. So just don't let that happen to you, okay?